To understand basically the process of land acquisition, we have to see the role of state institutions as well as international institutions and the role of capital. In the case of Beria town, we saw that land in Gadap was occupied and usurped with the facilitation of the judiciary. The Supreme Court retrospectively had corrected an illegal and irregular land transfer by the MDA, the Malay Development Authority. And since then, basically what has happened is that with impunity, Beria town has been encroaching on Kirthar National Park area. So what the Supreme Court did was pave the way for more land acquisition. We also saw in the case of Gujjar and Orangi Nalas in Karachi, where established legal doctrines were erased under the pretense of demolishing encroachments, which was basically a narrative created. The state demolished what they were calling encroachments were actually leased ghar the. Aur na sirf leased the, kuch ke to equitable titles the by virtue of paying money for utilities, gas, bijli, electricity. And what the state also did was override legal doctrine from 1986, under which a lot of these kachi abadis had been regularized. And they also evaded, by calling them encroachment, even though they weren't, they evaded the whole process of compensation under the Land Acquisition Act. So a colonial era law, which we think is archaic, wo bhi yani ke follow nahi hua. Also, interestingly, a Land Acquisition Act also allows acquisition for private use, which is extremely troubling. कि public use तो समझ में आता है, लेकिन private use क्या होता है? यानी आप companies के लिए लोगों को बेघर बेदखल करेंगे. अच्छा, एक और चीज़ जो हमने देखी है, मलीर एक्सप्रेसवे ये बना रहे हैं 2 elite gated communities को जोड़ने के लिए. 39 किलोमीटर का ये एक्सप्रेसवे है, जिसके वजह से orchards, farmlands और wildlife ये सारी तकरीबन जो है ना ये ख़त्म होने को जा रही हैं. EIA का process has been completely rendered futile and meaningless. We actually attended the EIA hearings and it was a bogus process, right? I mean वो ऐसे ही check box करने के लिए किया था. पांचवी चीज़ जो हम देख रहे हैं कि मलीर के रिवर बेड से और दीगर कराची के इर्द गिर्द जो रूरल एरियाज़ हैं उधर के रिवर बेड से सैंड और ग्रेवल एक्सकवेशन जो है वो यानी कि की जा रही है अनरिलेंटिंगली, even though it is against the law, and it is still going on. Because what ends up happening is that once you have demolished, evicted, extracted, once you have displaced, it is much harder to rectify the wrong when you have already done all that. So we are not only seeing an erasure of ameliorative legal doctrines that secure tenure and regularize goats and kachi abadis, but we're actually seeing physical erasure of homes, shops, link roads that connect communities. And they do that before people can access courts. We see in Gadap, where Beria is and where DHA is now currently expanding, graves and antiquities from the 13th century, which the government of Sindh has not yet notified, but are being paved over and constructed before we can get them legal protection. So what I'm trying to basically say is that it's much harder to rectify wrongs after you've altered the legal, physical, historical, political landscape so thoroughly when goats are bound by incarceral walls so that people cannot graze for elite housing projects, and where FWO and NLC that are working on evicting and demolishing homes in Gujjar and Orangi Nala, तो वो एक यानी कि evictions के बाद वो basically उन areas को इस तरह बर्बाद कर देते हैं कि landsliding की जद में आके खुद ब खुद लोग जो हैं वो अपने घर छोड़ देते हैं तंग आके इस अजाब से. And basically what we've seen in Karachi, not just in the urban center but also its rural surrounding areas, is a massive occupation by builders, financialization of land and real estate speculation. We see the weaponization of the FIR and the threat of arrests and how easily vague, overbroad anti-terrorism laws are used to scare, intimidate and silence dissent. अगर कोई activism कर रहा है तो हर घर आने से गडाप के अंदर किसी एक young बंदे के खिलाफ anti-terrorism की FIR ज़रूर थी. तो this system of surveillance and securitization basically otherizes people and criminalizes them as opposed to portraying them as activists and defenders of their land and natural resources. Another point is the lending of IMF, ADB and World Bank. So a lot of times we see that these international financiers have funded projects which are actually causing further dispossession. We see that in Badin and the Indus Delta with a flawed LBOD project which was funded by the World Bank. But we also see in Gujjar and Orangi Nala What the World Bank does, even though they have very good environmental laws made in 2018, they skirt around the issue. तो कहते हैं भाई हमारी इधर फंडिंग नहीं है जहाँ encroachment की ड्राइव हुई है और लोगों को डिमोलिश किया, लेकिन उसके इर्द गिर्द हम लोग गवर्नमेंट ऑफ सिंध के साथ नेगोशिएट करते रहेंगे, हालांकि वो ही इन्वॉल्व हैं डेमोलिशंस के अंदर. So international finance, we need, as activists, as lawyers sitting in this room, as young students, we need to develop robust mechanisms to keep international financial help in check. There is absolutely no checks and balances on MNCs. Multinational companies आती हैं, मैं हर सेशन में ये बोलती हूँ कि जोही के अंदर, जहाँ अभी सैलाब के अंदर लोग सैलाब की जद में आए हुए हैं, उधर की पूरे चावल की जो कल्टिवेशन थी वो बर्बाद हो गई, और ये तेल निकाल के आपकी BHP बिलिंगटन चली भी गई, लेकिन कोई एक केस इनके खिलाफ फाइल नहीं हुआ. और हैरत की बात तो ये है कि 20-25 सालों से हमारा यूनाइटेड नेशंस का जो इंसानी हुकूक के मैकेनिज्म्स हैं, दे हैव बीन ट्राइंग टू कम, बट वी स्टिल डोंट हैव अ बाइंडिंग ट्रीटी that we can hold multinational corporations to task, to accountability. Of course, we know that dispossession, displacement, jabri bedakhli, mismari, इसके gendered aspects होते हैं. औरतों के ऊपर इसके जो असरात होते हैं वो ज़्यादा deeply गहराई से feel किए जाते हैं, because we know that poverty is feminized. Women lose the most when they are evicted from their villages. Their collection of firewood is obviously curtailed, as well as water. और अभी कुछ गाँव के अंदर cow dung जो है वो एक ऐसी चीज़ बन गई है क्योंकि लकड़ियाँ नहीं हैं चूल्हा जलाने के लिए, तो cow dung has become almost like a valuable commodity. Women are responsible for the social production of families, and when their homes are demolished, a lot of women who are engaged in home-based labor, when they lose their homes, they also lose their economic activities. When the FWO and NLC destroy link bridges between two communities, when they override legal doctrines, गडाब के अंदर सैकड़ों सदियों से easements चली आई हैं कि भाई ये रास्ता आप इस्तेमाल करेंगे, सब collectively इस्तेमाल करेंगे, ये कुआं है, ये हमारे grazing के pastures हैं, तो वो सारा जो एक collective commons का doctrine था, तो वो erase किया जा रहा है, और बहुत ही यानी कि systematically. Indigenous people need to, women and indigenous people, rural people need to be centered in these discussions. What we like calling the peripheries are not actually peripheries, but they are constituted as peripheries, because we are not including people who represent indigenous voices. Even in this conference, right, we are seeing the same people and we're not listening to voices from the peripheries, and we are involved in further otherizing and peripherizing these communities. कल आतिफ मियाँ ने एक बात कही थी कि जब तक डेमोक्रेसी नहीं होगी, वॉइस नहीं होगी, तब तक आपको यानी कि फूड सॉवरेंटी नहीं होगी. लेकिन उन्होंने ये नहीं सोचा कि जब तक कैपिटलिस्ट सिस्टम्स को डिसमेंटल किया जाएगा, जब तक IMF को डिसमेंटल नहीं किया जाएगा, जब तक रेपरेशंस और डेट फॉरगिवनेस नहीं होगा, that is where we are going to keep depriving people of their voice. Thank you very much.